Hello, and welcome back to RiffScript presents All Fingers and Thumbs. Hi, my name is Harshvardhan, and person sitting next or in front of a camera, all the way in India, is Jainish. Hi, Jainish.
Hi Harshvardhan. It's been a
Um,
long time.
yes, actually, अरे क्या करें शेड्यूल ऐसा हो गया सो आज का जो टॉपिक है इट इज काइंड ऑफ लाइक मेरे लिए भी एक नया टॉपिक है व्हेन जैनिश फर्स्ट इंट्रोड्यूस द टॉपिक टू मी उसने ऐसा बोला एनएफटी मतलब सुना तो था बट मालूम नहीं था क्या है एंड देन आई लुक्ड ओवर द इंटरनेट फिर जैनिश से बात हुई ही सेड कि नॉन फंजिबल एसेट्स मतलब जो एसेट्स जो कभी उसका कोई कॉपी नहीं बन सकता वो दूसरी बार नहीं बन सकता जैसे अभी हमारी बात हो रही थी एंड ही सेड कि जैक डॉर्सी जो ट्विटर का सीईओ है हिज फर्स्ट ट्वीट उसकी ट्वीट लाइक ही सोल्ड हिज फर्स्ट ट्वीट आई डोंट नो वेदर ही सोल्ड और व्हाटएवर वाज द सीन बट देन the first tweet of Jack Dorsey was sold in some $36 million or
No,
something like that.
it was sold at $3 million of price.
Oh yes, sorry. तो वही तो like it is kind of an interesting topic or in today's date it is like gaining a lot of buzz around. So आज के जो हमारे guest हैं Moksha Kumar, she is an expert in creators economy in this non-fungible assets and much like she herself creates such things. So we'll get to know about what are these assets, how this technology or how this concept evolved through this podcast. And so yes, let's welcome her without wasting for any further time.
But I'd like to give a disclaimer to the viewers or the listeners. We'll not be talking about blockchain or technology in detail because she is an artist herself. And we'll talk about NFT for general people. And we'll also talk about creators economy and how artists need to build a community because she has created or she has aimed to create a community for artists. So let's welcome her and let's talk to her more about these things. So hi Moksha, welcome to our podcast. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi. No, it's a true pleasure. True pleasure.
Yeah. So we've been talking a lot about various things, right? On using Instagram, but I was curious because when I saw your profile, I was quite intrigued by the art that you produce. And the first question that came to my mind is, I've seen various piece of art that you produced were just simple strokes. And there was some sort of philosophy into that. And you wrote description about those pieces of art. So I wanted to know what kind of philosophy that you follow and how do those strokes reflect something or mean something.
Sure. So for me, even as a kid, जब road पे जब चलती थी and mom के साथ, you go to the market or something like that, I would always stare at buildings. I would never stare at people or the fruits, nothing. So I would always look at the buildings and my mom was like, why is she looking at the buildings? So I would look at it and I would tell her, 4 squares, 3 triangles, and 2 circles. And she would just be like, this kid is crazy, But at the same time, they realized that my idea behind that was the art. I was looking at shapes. I was not even looking at anything else. So that's what translated to me over the years. So when you see those lines, those are the lines I'm seeing every day. Like for me, it can't go without that. So if I look at a building, the way the light hits the wall, there's the line right there. And it kind of connects across the space. So the beauty lies in that. So if you see the lines, the philosophy is the fact that the space is that beautiful. And at the end of the day, what is left is all the architecture, But like, I think there was a beautiful quote, I forget who it is by, that even after civilization is gone, all that is left is the art. So I go off of that philosophy where everything may be gone, but at the end of the day, those buildings will be there. They might be filled with, trees and whatever, but that just makes it that much more beautiful. It's very dystopian, but at the same time, I'm like, we're already here living in that, but that's the beauty of that's the point.
Right. So do you seek symmetry? Because you said that you are always looking after those shapes, right? So do you seek symmetry?
I like both symmetry and asymmetry, because what is life but both of those things, you know? So even like, I think the most simplest explanation would be, have you seen the Japanese who practice kintsukuroi, which is, filling gold inside the cracks of a broken cup? That's how I see it. Where you can, even if it's something is broken, it's still perfect to me. So even if it's symmetric or asymmetric, the point is to find the beauty. And that is what art is to me.
Interesting. I see an
Wow.
interesting painting behind you. So can you,
Oh, yeah.
can you elaborate on what this reflects?
So this is something that's very close to my heart. Recently, I think I started up an archive, which was for South Indian artists. Now, the point is that everybody says diversity, but I said, why aren't you meaning diversity in the true sense of the term? So for me, these are actually neurodiverse kids who did the art. And I'm like, these kids are brilliant. Like, this is the kind of palette that I came to almost 20 years later, and they're able to do it now. And to me, that is the biggest thing, because it's like, if I can see success in someone else, I would rather encourage it. Because as of today, there's not too many people who are able to do that in an economy that has so many artists and people. And I'm like, okay, so the market can still have that place. So why not give the space? So I started by buying the work myself and then saying, okay, how can I include it? How can I, make it better? Or how can I give these guys a space to be able to express themselves? Because it's not always that the same neurodiverse kid will get a job or they will be able to get accepted in society. We still have stigma. So to be able to break that stigma, we need to normalize it. And that is how I'm taking that step, because I would like to see people normalize it. Mental health is not a stigma. It's actually very real. So, this was the start. This was the painting that you're seeing. There are two of them. There's one on top as well, which is so two different people who did it.
Wow.
And that's what, so I included it in my archive also, because I said that is what diversity means to me. So even if it's the person who's doing folk art, or they're doing this kind of work, or they come from many different backgrounds, it doesn't matter who they are. What comes to me is how experimental and how far they're willing to push themselves despite all of it. That is the base philosophy. First of all, that's the base philosophy even in art, is that how far are you willing to go, because it's all risk. So that's where this painting came from, because I saw it and I said, you know what, this is great.
Wow. Actually, we have done a few episodes with various artists, and what we have observed is most of these artists are like you, are willing to talk about mental health more than any other people. People come from corporates, people be it entrepreneurs or be it any other people who are coming from organizations or representing an organization, are not willing
Right.
to discuss mental health and how it should be destigmatized, right? But most of the
Yeah.
artists are quite keen on working with mental health issues. So why is that? Why is that?
So what I see is that in terms of art, you're given the space. You're given the space to express. Even, come on, you even have something called art therapy. So automatically an artist is going to think on those lines, because we face it on a very daily basis. Not every artist is like, all put together. And that doesn't happen. So I feel somewhere creativity has a bit of a price, where you do have your issues, but you're not seeing it as an issue, more like, okay, I will deal with it. Whereas in a corporate sphere, you're automatically judged on the basis of your performance, your basis of the politics you play, the basis of what you're delivering on the table. So all of that kind of negates the conversation itself. So when you're looking at mental health as a conversation with them, they're not able to come from that same space at all, because they've not even seen it. They're not able to give that space itself. So if they talk to someone on a personal basis, maybe they go for therapy, maybe they talk to other people, it's possible, but they won't be able to say it out loud, because on a general sphere, the world still does not accept it. So when you see the judgment that is passed, it is far more difficult for a corporate person to come out and say it. If you say, I'm an artist, I'm like this only, they'll be like, ha, yeah, you're like this only. You know what I mean? Like, it's more
Got it.
accepted in that, it's more accepted in that sense, but it's not seen that way in a corporate. Imagine someone in a suit and saying that, and you automatically just look at them like, wait, are you crazy? And then they're like, it's an automatic disassociation that is there. So that is what I feel an artist is able to do. And that's why it's so important even now in whichever sphere, whether we have your NFTs or you have your digital art, any of them, we're still able to tackle the problem far better because that space is given.
Hmm. So talking about digital art, how is this different, or is it, are there any pros and cons between digital art and physical art?
Well, 100%, because in digital, I mean, but I guess it's very difficult now considering that there's so much of technology that's still, being built. But recently, when I was doing my little bit of my research, and I realized that digital art has always been there in India since the 1990s. So 1991 was the first digital art or computer art exhibition that was held in Jahangir Art Gallery.
Oh.
And the artist who did it was Akbar Padamsi. And you see his work and you're like, I don't think even today we have that kind of capacity to keep up to the kind of creativity that he put on paper. It's an actual computer art, and then it's digitally produced and printed. So I'm like, boss, I mean, that was a different generation, sure, but we're able to see that there was a history for sure. So if you look at it now, obviously it's going to go much further. People are looking at 3D renditions, they're looking at combining science and art, things that we would not see before. And they would say, oh, it's unconventional, when it's not. It's actually always been a part. So, but when you specifically see digital art or NFTs today, I don't think there's a problem as much as there is a separate economy that is being created. It's an individualistic economy because it focuses completely on the person who is producing the work as opposed to an institution. Given, yes, that the institution itself was able to put it forward. Sotheby's auctioned it for 69 million, right? People's video.
Yeah.
But that kind of snowballed from there. And you know what's interesting, by the way? That same thing that was auctioned for 69 million was bought by someone from Chennai.
Oh.
So
Oh.
these are things that you don't even realize how interconnected the world is. So no matter what you're doing, the point is to have your voice out there and be proactive. So that's what I mean by, like, when I see the archive or I see it art or see digital art also, unless you're proactive, it's not going to work. It's a matter of having the passion to follow right through, whether it is the digital medium or the traditional medium, it doesn't matter. But given that right now it is gaining popularity, I can imagine a lot more artists taking to it and sticking with it and going forward. So yeah, that's yeah.
So if someone buys this, these kinds of work, are they able to sell that again, as in to someone else as well, or it's just that they have to keep it to themselves?
So what it depends on the copyright issues that are being sort of dealt with in that point, because unfortunately digital work needs a mark or usually have a watermark. With them it'll be coded or it'll be embedded, one of those two things. So when that is the case, and usually, as far as I've seen, digital collectors collect it for the sake of it being very unique. So it's not let go of until and
Okay.
unless, and as of now, because the crypto market is still volatile, so they won't let it go. They'll buy it at a good price, certainly, but they'll hold on to it until, of course, the market is more solid. Because of the fact that it's not entirely regulated, it's still volatile, it's still gaining steam. So at this point in time, I imagine a lot of people are still going to hold on to their pieces. And if ever the market kind of goes upward like it did before with Bitcoin, that's probably when you'll see a lot of people selling.
But
Okay.
It's the
So
same thing.
yes. So like my question will be like a person who does not know anything about this thing. So you're saying that since 1990, digital art is there, and then this non-fungible assets have been there. But then fact that you add the word token to it, it makes it the crypto thing. So
Yes.
right now, just because of that token thing, it has gained much more buzz around it.
It's actually, I would say it's a historic moment, honestly speaking, because it's saying basically it's like a big, change in the way that power structures are. It's already changing the fact that a person who is producing art can earn, doesn't have to, you don't have the traditional, oh, he's a broke artist. That's no longer
Yeah.
there. that's no longer there, because everything is becoming so individualized that you're able to see that, okay, this is what I can do and this is how I can accomplish it. If digital art is the way for it, yes, sure, why not? Because it's a new, it's a new phase. If you saw maybe in 2019 to 2020, the maximum number of buyers and the maximum number of people wanting to sell NFTs were there. It's kind of died down, not entirely, but yeah, it's kind of died down in terms of the buzz that was being created. But at the same time, you have to understand it's a new market. So then automatically people are going to go. It's like maybe the first time that Netflix was introduced, everybody was on there after that. It's the same thing. It's the
Yeah.
digital sphere. So why not?
But I guess
So you
the
can sell
reason,
anything.
yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, pretty
Uh,
much. You can sell anything.
okay, got
But
it.
I
Now,
guess
Janish, please.
the reason tokens were introduced would be because the need of the hour is decentralization, right? Because the
Yep.
centralized system of economy is created in such a way that you cannot accommodate digital art. And if let's say if in traditional sense someone purchases this piece of art with
Yeah.
$69 million rupees, right? So he'll be under scrutiny, right? Because of the centralized system.
So what's interesting is that, and I'm talking about art in general also, and it's not something that is not known. So there's something known as the Geneva Black, the Freeport. It was there in this movie called, or rather documentary called Black Box, and in that Freeport there are so many priceless works that have no price. Do you know why? Because it's tax evasion, straight tax
Ah,
evasion.
Okay.
So, and it's very openly known, by the way. It's an extremely openly known fact. It's just that there's nothing you can do. There's no, in fact, even now, the Sotheby's and Christie's, it's there. It's a fact. We know for a fact that it's all tax evasion, that these prices are inflated for a very strong reason.
hmm. So
So there you
Okay.
go.
but उसके लिए मुझे मेरे दिमाग में और दो क्वेश्चन ये होते हैं कि जैसे होता है ना ट्रेडिशनल सेंस में कि जो बिलियनर्स होते हैं वो ऐसी बड़ी बड़ी पेंटिंग्स जो ट्रेडिशनल पेंटिंग्स होती है उसको परचेस करते हैं क्योंकि उनको टैक्सेस में सेव करना होता है और वो टैक्स हेवन
Yep.
कंट्रीज में उसको रखते हैं फिर उसको इन्फ्लेट करके उसको सेल कर देंगे ताकि उनका प्रॉफिट बढ़े राइट और फिर भी उनको टैक्स ना भरना पड़े
जी
तो
नहीं
तो
जी
सेम वे में क्या एनएफटी में भी हो सकता है
is very possible. It's very possible that that's also a way that, but here's the interesting thing though, is that the NFTs, rather the auction houses are not involved. So you see that third person is not involved. So there's no in between factor that is inflating these prices. You see. So
Okay.
even if there is a certain amount of tax evasion, that's happening between two people, not three now. So even in terms of inflation of price, max that it can go to is the 69 million that you're looking at. It can go to far more than that also, but the openness of that transaction is there. Whereas sometimes in an auction house, there's no openness. There might be buy-ins, there might be, certain clients that they speak to, and that won't be there. But that's just the way it works. That's just the system. So when you look at something that is decentralized and that it goes through the individual is deciding the price first. And then second, the buyer is able to bid automatically. The way that the NFT works is by bidding. So it's an automatic auction, but that's controlled not by anybody else, but the individual. So yeah, sure, you can evade taxes, but at the end of the day, the person, the individual who's reporting it will have to report the price. So at the end of the day, it's like, how much are you going to evade in that? Is my question. Whereas in this,
yeah, you can continue.
Sorry. Whereas in the this thing of Sotheby's and Christie's, you can automatically see the evasion through the Freeport. There's a space for it. Whereas in digital art, you don't need the space. It's already all online. There's actually no need for a physical space per se, right? So that is what I mean.
But our tax system is not able to accommodate such transactions. So we are the people, the governments, the businesses which are dealing in which are giants like Amazon and Facebook and companies like these are not going to make it easy for people who want to decentralize the internet, right? Because a lot of people in the past were also trying to decentralize the internet, right? That's why we are it's been told that we are moving towards Web3, where everything will be decentralized, right? There won't be any control. There won't be any centralized system which will be controlling everything. But what I feel is humans are inherently programmed to control things, right?
I mean, you're just going straight into philosophy now, and it's so true. You're not wrong. It's absolutely true, because that's just the way that it works. And the thing is that the conglomerates that you're looking at, Facebook and Instagram, all of them know this. That's why even the social media, the social dilemma, I don't know if you've watched it, but when you see it, you start realizing even the people who produced it no longer have control on it. They can't even control themselves. So when they know that it's psychological warfare that is going to be the end all and be all, they're definitely going to use it. Secondly, I think recently there was this whole conversation on how NFTs somehow have a carbon footprint. No doubt they do. But the same carbon footprint has been produced by so many other sources, and it's never been addressed. It's never been addressed. And I'm like, why has it not been addressed until the person who is in charge kind of wants to, change that equation? Or even if the common man wants to profit, it automatically becomes problematic, because that questions the system of capitalism itself.
Right. But at the same time, if you look at the other side of the coin, this thing would remain the issue forever, right? If we move towards decentralization of everything, then there will be no one who could say that we are producing this much amount of carbon footprint and we need to control that, right? There won't be any single person who would say this and who would try to control things. How would that work?
I would say the eternal problem is who has control and who doesn't, which, by the way, it's an eternal question, to be very, very clear. I mean, and that is why it's so strange, because art has always been the answer to that question. Do you see? Because it's not political and it doesn't come from a place of power, but it comes from the place of having to express. So when you express yourself, automatically the power is taken by the person who's looking at it. It is not even in the person who has made it. So that is where art makes the biggest difference. And that's why I realized NFTs are a big question mark to a lot of people, because they're like, so what does art become then? You see, that's what I realize is happening now. And I imagine that that's not a question we can answer easily, because it's so new. If you look at the history of art in India, we have barely had we barely had 70 years of art, not even, given counting all the temples and the, all the other architectural,
Yes.
and the awareness of it. So we've not had that. We've not even had, contemporary art for that long. And we've already been pushed to consider NFTs and digital art. So, the scope of work that is there is massive. We cannot regulate it now for sure, because there's too many factors that are playing in. We don't even have enough of an arts education to be able to tell people that this is what it is. So how are we going to reach out to them in terms of NFTs is my question.
True.
So the fact that you said that, brought that point. My question is that if I were to produce such things, NFT and everything, and I want to make some money out of it or sell them, so how is the process like? As in, how should I begin with everything? And how was your experience with that as well?
Oh, sure. So basically what I did was I also used to work with digital art for a long time, by the way. I did my dissertation in art history, and I started using the same images that I documented with to create digital art so that I could, print it or, kind of create an impact. Then I started realizing that these were actually the base of how NFTs work, is that you can use a software to create the, the art that you want, whether it's 3D imaging or it's, architectural software, anything. It could be anything, honestly speaking. But it has to be of value in the sense that at least a person who's looking at it would want to buy it. Now that depends on your creativity. How do you want to push it? You want to create a political statement. You want to say, what do you say, free free a country or free debate, free anything. It's a matter of gaining traction. So the market itself works off the basis of how you create the work and then how you're putting it forward also, which is very much how creative economy has always worked. The only difference here is the middleman is absent. So if say you create a work, you want to put it up, it mostly has to be done through a digital sphere. You can even do it on MS Paint for all you know. And you can say, I want to do an MS Paint, slightly like an 8-bit, style of work, and then create it and put it up as an NFT. You can also do that. It's 100% possible. People are scanning paintings and scanning their sculptures 360 and putting them up also as NFTs. So both of these things are going. You can very well produce the physical work and create it as an NFT. All you have to do is to be able to convert it to a digital, um, like a GIF or a JPEG or something like that, so that it's uploadable. And secondly, you're supposed to embed, which means it allows the creator the copyrights as well, so that you know for a fact that these are your works only, because it's all rampant. The black market is the black market at the end of the day.
But how do you
So
price your artwork? Put a price. How do you put a
the
price?
best way that you can do it is through experience. And that's why I would, no, seriously, it's the best way to do it is to maybe talk to other artists. More often than not, very very open to giving advice, because we're like, we don't want you to make the same mistake, and we certainly want you to be able to move forward. So talk to maybe multiple artists who are also dealing with the NFT sphere. Clubhouse is great for that information, because there are many people who talk about NFTs. You could even message someone and say, hey, I'd like to talk to you about NFTs. I know you're an NFT artist, and they will respond. So it's like you're not short of resources at all. You absolutely have the entire the range of resources for you to be able to just create an NFT and post it if you want to. And there are many platforms that now also have India not just listed, but you can also put it up. I know people use OpenSea, people use Wazir X, and they've used, I don't know, there's a couple of them. These are a few of them that are just coming to mind right now. So, it's like possible to do it, no, like, because everybody in a way is kind of banding together to help the other person. It's very interesting to see that shift. Because initially, when I went onto Clubhouse, the NFT talks, the moment someone said, I'm a beginner and I don't know what to do, 3 or 4 people would immediately give as many tips possible for the person to be able to create work. So to be able to rely on an like a sort of a decentralized system is becoming far more interesting, because the sense of community is also being sort of brought in.
But the sense of community is good. I mean, when it comes to building something which is supposed to be decentralized, but as I've said, we are inherently we are not destined to power. We are programmed to power over people, control over people. So I feel that somehow will come to that point where a few people will be controlling the economy, the creators economy, the NFT and the cryptocurrency market. Because even now we don't know why cryptocurrencies are so speculative and so volatile. We don't know. Why is that? If
that's because
everything is built by community, how are the prices are measured? How are we seeing these cryptocurrencies go so volatile?
So what's interesting here is that it's like how you see art markets and investments. Essentially, it is still volatile. Like, no matter what, it's just bringing it to light that money does move that way. It's just that we have been given a sense of security because of certain certain resources that say, okay, this is what is secure. But most of the market is highly volatile. Just now we saw a drop in the market as well, but nobody talks about it because they're like, that's normal. But when you look at the sphere of NFTs, because the artist is already short on resources and we have a certain capacity to do only so much, it is that much more visible. So the volatility is very much a part of any market. Regulation that way is very difficult. I mean, everything moves in that, nanoseconds almost, I would say. So it's the same over here, where you cannot see the transactions happening because it's moving so fast. But that doesn't mean that you cannot add a measure of support, or continue to invest in it, or continue to make sure that at least to a certain extent it is stabilized. I imagine when the stock market was formed, it was not stable. It was volatile. Even then, people would say investing in stocks, oh my God, they still do.
Yeah.
They still do. So it's the same thing. It's very much the same thing where you're investing in something that is going to have a bit of a up and down movement, but you already know what you're investing into in this case because it's open.
True. Right. In NFTs, I believe in decentralization, but I'm somewhat skeptic because of the behavior of people, psychology of humans.
Right.
To
But
abhi
that
bhi,
way, we can be skeptics even in the art market. That's what
yeah,
I mean. Like, the
वो तो
the
already
point
corrupted
is
है.
to
मतलब यहाँ
exactly.
अभी जो centralized system है, it is already corrupted and we are aware of that. तो जो हम
Yeah.
मतलब हम जो सपने देख रहे हैं ना कि डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन सभी चीजों का हो जाए, तो अभी भी ऐसा हो रहा है कि बिटकॉइन का कंट्रोल अभी 40 या 50 पीपल के अंडर कंट्रोल में है बिटकॉइन, इवन दो द कंसेप्ट वाज टू मेक श्योर दैट सब एक कम्युनिटी हो और सब हर एक ट्रांजेक्शन के साथ हर कोई जितने भी लोग इसमें इन्वॉल्व है वो अप्रूव करे, ऐसा है. लेकिन फिर भी कंट्रोल अभी 40-50 पीपल के हाथ में है, तो वो अल्टीमेटली हुआ तो वही ना.
But that's always my thing is that do you want it to be decentralized in the true sense of the term? Because even when it's decentralized means that there has to be rules. So you're already putting yourself in a bit of a paradox, which is why I said it's such a philosophical question. Because you're asking the human nature a dual, paradox of sorts. You're like a riddle. And then you're like, wait, do I answer the riddle or do we actually get the work done? Because there's no way, you know what I mean? So even if it is going to be decentralized, I imagine that there will be at least a comprehensive set of rules. So in the true sense, even I mean, if you're gonna go all the way, you might as well say, like, is there anything such as free will?
True. We just had this.
I,
We just had this discussion
you know,
on our last episode. It is about to release, and we were talking about free will and stuff like that. Yeah.
but really, like, if you're gonna go all the way, that like it's like a huge philosophical question.
True.
And that's what I find, like, a lot of artists do very well is that we answer it, but we answer it in a way that you will not expect. And that is what the point of art is, to be able to give you that space to say, like, boss, some days there are no answers, and that's perfectly fine. Like, it's okay not to have all the answers.
True.
Problem lies in the fact that the human nature wants those answers. It's like, come on, we wanted to go and figure out God. And at that time, I'm just kind of like, I'm so sure that all of our religions said, He's there, we believe it. It doesn't have to be figured out. But there are people who want to figure it all out. So, you have both sides.
Yeah. It is in our nature that we want clarity and we want certainty. Even though life itself is uncertain, we want absolute
Yeah.
certainty and we want answers of everything.
Absolutely. So it's very difficult to kind of pull that together when you are approaching a very new system. So that's why I want to also see, hopefully, maybe give it time and see how it works, because it's so new. The fact that India itself has managed to come on board and also become a serious contender is something like amazing. It's really amazing because, first of all, a couple of people in Chennai bought the work. Secondly, there are so many artists who are all Indian and who are being bought from, people in Japan, people in London, people in, the America. Every single country that you're looking at, of course, has the NFT artists. But imagine, they're saying a lot of them are coming from India. Now, why would they say that? Obviously, we do have creative vision. It's just that we need to find our own space, given the fact that there are so many genres that are being dealt with. India is that diverse. So even if you're looking at, say, folk art, you're looking at a revival of it now. You're looking at, paintings that are from a specific, like, at a certain point in time, there's something called the company school, which was influenced both by Western and the Eastern sensibility. So they would do, like, these beautiful miniatures influenced by the miniature painting, and they would create these domestic scenes, or they would create, like, scenes of everyday life, or market scenes, or caricatures. So that's becoming popular. So you have so many genres in India alone that even when you're looking to fill that gap via the creators economy, it's so hard. Where do you go? You have that many people who want to put their creative voice, and that many ideas that are also coming out. So I feel like if we're going to find a space for all of it, we have to be a little bit more, I would say, accepting of it at this point in time because of the changes that are taking place.
Right. True.
So my question, as just as a beginner and a person who wants to, explore something with NFT, is that people say that social media is a curse to the humanity. But
Mhm.
then when things like NFT, things like these things comes up, so it is kind of it is a boon to the people who make their future and who rely on social media for these things. So how you dealt with social media at your initial phase, and right now how you are dealing with it, and how it has helped you in in making money, obviously, and then dealing with people as well.
So what I find interesting is that social media is more of a creative space than anything else. No doubt there is always undue pressure for the person who is posting to keep posting and keep up. But then there are those accounts that say, you know what, I don't do regular posting and I'm just going to do my own thing and people have to just be okay with it. And there are those who are okay. So the point is that social media has opened it up to the world so that you can also find yourself your own audience, which is at the end of the day what a creator wants is their own audience. So to be able to create and do such work and then put it up itself is a huge deal. But the thing is that, and I realize that when people say social media is a curse, they're also looking at the fact that it is, in a very direct sense, psychological warfare. So those two are very different things, though. When it is psychological warfare, it's because the algorithm is being used against you, whereas the creator is finding a way to use the algorithm to create more work. So those are two very different ways of approaching the same thing. And I imagine that that's the difference we need to put out there also. Because the way it is being marketed, I mean, even now, Facebook is facing a lot of flack. They're having to rename the entire platform itself. But that's because this is this part of it which you're looking at, which is the psychological warfare bit. But if you look at the creator side of it, to be able to introduce that much beauty to the person and people and introduce them to new ideas, I say, why not? Fortunately, we've been able to find a way to use those platforms to our advantage. And I think that's the best thing to happen. And a lot of people use Instagram to, say, I term it more as commercial art because it's images that you see, images that are relatable. Whereas when you look at art, it's like you're deviating from what is usual and creating something that's entirely new. But there is space for both of that because people are able to understand it because they come from different parts of the world. So that is fine. That I completely get on board with. But the fact that the algorithm is used to create a more difficult space for us to navigate, that is what I take issue with social media. But as a whole, as a tool, I think it's great because it's like it gave a voice to so many people. I imagine even TikTok was that before it got banned. So many people relied on it because they were able to make money, they were able to find viewers, they were able to create content, they were able to express themselves, which is what a person wants. At the end of the day, they just want just one person to listen. So if you're going to say social media is a curse, I will always ask for the clarification for it as to why. If you feel it's a curse, if you feel that it's affecting people, then we look even further. The further bit is the fact that it is being used to create an atmosphere of hostility. Even Facebook has done that. They've told us that they've influenced political campaigns, they've done some really shady stuff. So when you see that versus what the creators do, it's very different. So, I mean, of course, there's a dark side to everything, no doubt. But in this case, at least I feel social media has been able to, create a space for people who have never had that and be given the space to also create without judgment, which is a huge part of what we do. So even as a beginner, if you want to put your work out there in social media, you know that you will take a little time, but you will gain the traction. It's a guaranteed success thing because you're able to post on a regular basis, you're able to put your content out there, you're staying true to who you are. But if you look at, say, a traditional market or like, as a like a bazaar, where you have to actually physically go, the resources needed are that much more, which means you're spending a lot, you're moving a lot, you are, transporting so much of the materials and your, artworks, and there's a possibility that something can break or get lost. So that all is negated when it's in social media because the person who wants to buy it will automatically contact you, right? They're genuinely interested. If not, also you have made sure that you've given your work to an audience that genuinely appreciates it. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
वाह,
Interesting.
जैसे अभी आपने बताया कि सोशल मीडिया could be utilized in a way that creators can have a much larger audience and can generate value, right? So
Yes.
initially जब मतलब past में conventional sense में जब people were making money, artists were considered as artists, writers were considered as broke, as you mentioned earlier, right? पर अभी
Yep.
अभी अभी वो अपॉर्चुनिटी क्रिएट हो रही है। मैंने बहुत सारे जैसे आर्टिस्ट है आपके जैसे जो इंस्टाग्राम से अपना पूरा बिजनेस वहीं से चलाते हैं, कुछ भी चीजें बेचनी हो, क्योंकि इंस्टाग्राम ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म है। और अभी वो लोग तो अभी ई कॉमर्स में कन्वर्ट हो रहे हैं, क्योंकि आप वहां पर आपकी अगर प्रोडक्ट्स है तो प्रोडक्ट्स भी डायरेक्टली सेल कर सकते हो, राइट?
Right.
तो उसकी वजह से बहुत इजी हो रहा है ना कि टू बिल्ड एन इकोनॉमी,
Right.
तो हाउ डू यू लुक एट दिस पैराडाइम शिफ्ट? क्योंकि आपने बहुत पहले भी देखा होगा कि पहले जब ट्रेडिशनल सेंस में हो रहा था, इंस्टाग्राम तो बहुत लेट आया, राइट?
Yeah. So for me, the paradigm shift is very interesting because it's like, again, it's like the person taking power, essentially. They're saying that, you know what, I don't need the institution to do this. Secondly, I find the whole, artists who broke kind of a bit strange, because there were those artists who broke, but there were those artists who were super smart, knew how to work the market, and figured everything out. When you look at actual art history and you start realizing that people worked double jobs even at that time, people worked for organizations also at that time, but maybe even at the, somewhere, much later in life, in their late 30s, they must have left the organization, saved enough money, and then done the art, but they did do it. So we don't talk about that. When we talk about artists, we talk about them like, oh, their art, they're all about their art all the time. No, actually not. They're a lot about the research. They're a lot about traveling. They're a lot about, figuring things out on hand. Some days it's just about thinking. I will sit in a corner and think, Michelangelo got into trouble for that. Actually, it's an amazing story which I was reading, and it's a beautiful book by Vasari, who's an art historian, the first art historian. He's known as the father of art history. So he writes that, and he wrote about all of these artists that he came in contact with, mostly the Italian Renaissance at the time. So he talked about Michelangelo and how he got into a lot of trouble with the Pope, because he was doing, of course, one painting for him, and then the Pope came and saw him sitting there, and he said, why are you sitting here? What are you doing sitting? And Michelangelo said, thinking. This guy got pissed off, because what is this sitting and thinking? We don't do anything like that with art. He's like, go back and do your work. Michelangelo got so pissed. He took everything. He actually moved to another city, and the Pope had to come begging and crying back, and Michelangelo charged him twice and finished the work. So I'm like, please don't mess with artists. Don't do it. If we're thinking there's a very good reason behind it, we genuinely want our work to look a certain way, but resolving it sometimes just takes some sitting and thinking. Like you do meditation, it's the same thing for us. We'll probably be just looking like, we're staring into space, but we're thinking about our work mostly. So, that's what I feel is like, it's like, this is where it kind of really comes in, like, the whole aspect of the artist's practice, where they come from, what they're doing. And all of that is accelerated by social media, because if you look today, you see people painting on social media, you see their process, they see everything. It's all opened up. So, the common person doesn't feel like, I don't think I can do that. It's more like, maybe I can. And maybe I'll be able to express myself better today or tomorrow, doesn't matter. Of course, there are those people who are like, ho sakta hai, I can totally do it. And then they figure out that they can't. So there's both sides to this coin. But the point is to be able to introduce it in the first place.
पर अभी आपने जैसे माइकल एंजेलो का एग्जांपल दिया, उससे मुझे एक क्वेश्चन ये भी होता है कि इफ वी कमर्शियलाइज द आर्ट, राइट, कि अगर हम जैसे इंस्टाग्राम से बहुत सारे आर्टिस्ट बिजनेस करते हैं, तो उसमें कई बार ये भी होता है ना, क्योंकि मेंटल हेल्थ का पॉइंट आ ही जाता है कि आपकी क्रिएटिव एनर्जी अगर कोई पेंटिंग में या किसी आर्ट वर्क में इतनी चली गई, तो फिर आप उसको कमर्शियल बेसिस पर आप उसको कैसे यूटिलाइज करोगे? आप कैसे सबकी, अगर मैंने 5-6 ऑर्डर एक साथ लिए हैं और हर एक को मैंने एक महीने का टाइम दिया है कि 1 महीने के बाद मैं आपका ऑर्डर आपको डिलीवर कर दूंगा या कर दूंगी, लेकिन मेरी क्रिएटिव एनर्जी फर्स्ट पेंटिंग में इतनी चली गई कि मुझे 4 के लिए और ज्यादा टाइम चाहिए, तो फिर उससे तो आपका वो सेंस ऑफ डिसिप्लिन, क्योंकि एज एन एंड यूजर अगर मैं एज अ कस्टमर मैं अगर देखता हूँ तो मुझे तो ये नहीं दिखेगा ना कि आपकी क्रिएटिव एनर्जी का क्या हो रहा है या फिर आपकी मेंटल हेल्थ का क्या हो रहा है। मुझे तो यही दिखेगा कि आई हैव ऑर्डर्ड दिस एंड आई नीड टू गेट दिस बाय द एंड ऑफ दिस मंथ, और एज यू मेंशन एज पर द टाइमलाइन, राइट? तो वहां
Right.
कैसे फिर वो थीन लाइन जो है वो कैसे मैच करेगी?
What I feel is that since you already know that you've signed up for a commercial stream, you already know that you have to have the product ready. My thing has always been is that as an artist, when you know your strengths and weaknesses, you are going to be able to work to them. Otherwise, it's very difficult to survive. And more than that, even now people are talking about multiple streams of income, which is so true. So true. So whatever you earn also, you're going to be able to earn it through many other streams. Even for me, it's the same. I earn currently through my organization that I work with, but also I make sure that I invest or I look at my art also and I continue to promote it. So you need to have many other places from which you're able to kind of survive, because as a creator, you're automatically putting yourself at a high risk. So when you know that the risks are that much, you should be able to compensate also. So planning that 100%, you should be able to plan it. Say you don't know how to plan it, take advice, talk to people, because more often than not, especially someone who comes from the creative side, they will be more than willing to advise you. And I feel people need to do that more, where they're expressing what their problem is and being able to also come back to the fact that, okay, maybe this is the way they dealt with it, how can I deal with it? But that means that you have to reflect on what you can do. So that's what I mean. Okay, you need to know your strengths and weaknesses so well that you're able to create the work at the pace that you want, certainly, but also at a pace that the client is asking for. When
Right.
you're on and I say like, especially because you're putting the client in that space, which means that your work has been commercialized, period, because it's no longer about you only, it's about you and the client. So when you already have that factor in, I don't think you're able to say that, like, no, I can't do it. Yes, the first time the client will be 100% like, okay, I understand, and okay, I hope that the delay is not too much. Second time, third time, it automatically, the world will go around the saying that this person doesn't deliver on time, which is what any business person will get as feedback.
Right.
So in order to prevent that, you start knowing what you can deliver at what time and work with it, so that even your mental health is not compromised in any way. But that means that you have to know yourself really well, right?
Right. But you have this
Yes.
community, right? Amoxytil that you manage,
Yeah, yeah,
and you manage various artists, right? You manage their artwork. So how do you deal
yeah.
with this?
So what I have decided to do is that to introduce the space as an archive. So archive basically means that, digitally speaking, they will have a mark, like they will have a place or a reference point where everybody can come in, access the information, see more about them, and maybe even go and even buy their work, because I've given their social media handles and their websites, everything goes on there. My thing out of this is I'm genuinely not looking at the profit right now, because I said there's no space that is even introducing these people. Yeah. So if there's no space for that, how are we going to move forward? This, like I said, there's too many gaps that need to be filled. So whether it's the education, or it's putting the artists out there, or even giving South artists a matter of that platform so that they can also go forward, is always going to be on my mind, because it's that huge a problem. And there's not enough manpower. There's not enough manpower at all. And we get caught up in the whole thing of, oh, but I need a job, oh, but I need to do this, oh, but I also need to do that. So those many factors also play in, where your daily life is going to be influenced by it. So in that, art kind of gets kind of thrown under the bus, because it's not exactly a first priority. And I also understand that. So there are two sides to this coin, where the artists will always have it as their first priority because it's their life. But those who are not necessarily artists and not in the creative economy, they're not going to consider it as a first priority. No. So that is the practical side of it. So my job is over here to be able to give these guys that platform. Yes, maybe later, if it turns into a virtual gallery, I don't know what's going to happen with it. My thing is that at least let me start. Let me be a starting point for these guys, so that they can also say, you know what, I have this. You won't believe it. was once I formed this, I realized, and I didn't realize it at the time, that there was another website called Moxie Tales as well, and they had a patent for the name in the US. So these guys got back to me saying that, you can't use it. And I said, essentially, in an international sphere, you can't say that because I wouldn't be offered the URL otherwise. You see what I mean? So, I mean, of course, that never happened. But then I sort of said, okay, let me just look further as to why these guys came back to me and how they heard about it, because I didn't expect it, to be honest. There are at least 15 to 20 news articles, one in Spanish, by the way, on this archive, just because of the fact that I started it. And I was like, this is what I wanted at the end of the day, to be able to get the ball rolling, no matter where that is and who hears of it. They need to know that this is that safe space for them. Because at the end of the day, yes, everything is about profit. But I'm like, there are so many ways to do that now. Why would you not give someone the space to be able to grow also? Say you want to decentralize your economy. How are you going to do it? You're not giving the person the space to grow. What are you going to do with the remaining factors that are going to be playing in then?
Yeah, true.
How are they going to understand? Understood, yes, sure, that the Gen Z and the, there are prior generations that are going to, or more generations that are going to come, that are going to be able to understand the technology and move very fast. Fair enough. But what about the rest of us then, who are also still a part of that economy and the fact that it's growing so fast? So unless you give a person a space to understand themselves and grow, it doesn't work. Let's go even further. Say we go into psychology and we say how fast the human brain develops. We don't develop until we're 25. We don't, and I'm like, people don't even know that. And you're expected to get everything, your life and your purpose and your passion, everything together. So if in being, you know what I mean? Like, the pressure is so undue. Just now, there was a tweet, I think 2 or 3 months ago, saying exactly this, that you're not prepared until 25 mentally, like actually, like the way that your brain grows. And when you're 30, that's when it actually starts to mature. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. So that makes a huge difference. That means we've been dating it all the wrong way entirely. But if you look at, say, the way that, how would I put it? Yeah, when you look at even like the Varna system, the caste system, and like, how they used to deal with it, they had 4 different stages in life. Even they knew it worked in stages. You can't all just go all straight up and finish all of it in one go. It doesn't work like that. They knew it worked in stages. So we've kind of lost that kind of connect between our roots and what is actually happening, because we've taken on a philosophy that is not necessarily ours.
Right.
So, when you look at the the problem as a whole, it's huge. Where do you start? Do you start by telling people that that we have a Western system that still governs us, or do you start by telling them that art is so huge that we need to start learning stuff like these things that I have learned? I learned only when I was in my late 20s. How are you going to teach the the younger generations that we've had centuries of art before this? And we have something like the Natya Shastra, which actually classifies all art, by the way, whether it is, the erotic art or it's the pottery or anything, all of it under Shilpa Shastra. That's it. And you know how brilliant that is? I'm just kind of like, everything was classified as a craft, and that's it. So there was no art versus craft. But so that's what I'm saying. All these things I got to know later. But how do you get to know that now? Who and where do you start with it?
True.
And if you have social media on hand, no doubt it's a great tool. And there are people who are doing fantastic things for, there's Art History Plus, and there's many different platforms that are and there are podcasts for art history as well. But how many things you're going to listen to and how many things you're going to see? Like that's the other problem. There's so many voices that people want to listen to, how certainly, but how do you give the space in a daily, like in the daily grind? You were just saying that actually.
मतलब जैसे जैसे हम इंटरनेट एज में आगे बढ़ते गए, वैसे वैसे इंफॉर्मेशन और नॉलेज का अबंडेंस होता गया. तो अभी फोमो हो रहा है सबको. तो सब अगर मतलब क्रिएटर्स इकोनॉमी की ये डार्क साइड भी है कि सबको अगर क्रिएट करना है तो वी हैव लॉट ऑफ क्रिएटर्स, बट कितना कंज्यूम करेंगे हम? कंज्यूम करने के लिए भी तो चाहिए ना. इतने सारे ऑप्शंस है अगर मेरे पास. जैसे हमारा ये
more supply than demand.
Yes, जैसे हमारा ये पॉडकास्ट है.
I would actually say that it's the supply is fine. The understanding of the supply is not there.
Ah.
And that is the biggest problem.
Yes.
Because when you understand what is happening in the art, boss, believe me, I've seen it. I've seen it all. I'll just give you a very simple example. So this was a kid who I was there in World Art Dubai in 2019. And I had just given up all my abstract works. And there, World Art Dubai is more of a commercial market, to be very honest. So I said, I don't think I have any chance of selling. There's no way. But you won't believe it. Because these kids in Dubai would have been given a slight hint of an education in art, they understood what I was saying. They were like, you know what, I get it, but I don't know how you're doing it, but I get it. And I'm like, these guys are 9, you know? So I was like, so obviously there is a way to be able to do this without having them feel like they're missing out. Where they're able to kind of say, okay, this is my interest, okay, I like, how you people say, oh, I really like landscapes or I really like portraits, but they're already centralizing it. But then when you understand what the person is also saying through their art, it makes it that much more interesting also. So we're finding it like, that's what I mean, that the gaps that you're looking at are like huge. They're almost black holes if you look at it. So even trying to fill something like that is certainly a start. But then the question also comes up as to how many can we fill and where do we start?
Right.
Okay. So you just said that the understanding of the art and the knowledge about that art. Your work, it resembles, every work of yours resembles kind of a philosophy. It says something, but then where does this inspiration come from? As in, आपने जैसा वो स्टार्टिंग में कहा कि you used to go with your mom, तो वो buildings देखते थे, lines, squares, shapes देखते थे, तो वो सब inspiration जो है, where does it come from?
So what I find interesting is, for me, it works in very strong phases. So there will be times when I will just be reading stuff and suddenly the visual will be like, oh, it speaks to me. Okay, I need to do something about that. And I'll do it. And that's just the way the creative mind works, is that we don't have a set pattern. So that's why the discipline aspect, kind of when it has to come in, and you want to make it like a very serious profession of yours, that is when you realize that inspiration can be tapped in, but as long as you make it a habit to keep reading and keep wanting to put yourself in that mind space. So that's where I feel that for at least those who are genuinely serious, if you look at a lot of artists, 9 to 5, that's how they do it. People are like, isn't that like a job? And I'm like, but it is. It very much is also a job, and it's needed to, like, you need to see it that way. So when you start seeing it as a job where you're sitting at a desk 9 to 5, drawing or painting or listening to music and maybe decoding the music, I don't know. I don't know how the process works, but you're able to say that this is how I want to be able to visualize it. For me, it's a little different because I will, for almost say 6 or 7 months, sometimes I won't produce work, but then sometimes in a week I'll produce 6 or 7 works, and that's it. Like, but that is a solid set of works that I genuinely want to put forward, and people will like. I think the one that you saw recently is the lines one. That was all part of that entire, like, the 6 works in 1 week, and people are like, that's crazy. And I'm like, I wouldn't have expected it, but that's just how my mind works. The point is to be able to find your process through your own this thing, trial and error, and say, okay, you know what, it's okay. This is how I work. I can't work like everybody else. This is where I feel social media, in terms of the algorithm, when you push a person to keep producing, that's the most difficult part. Because when they want to post, they're like, wait, I don't know what to post. But they don't have to. What they need to do is to give themselves the space. Always, I feel that the space to grow is that much more than the space to just, something put simply and, like, just post and write a few sentences at the bottom. Certainly people take it very seriously, and now it's just become like a machine. But is that what you want for yourself, is my question always. If you're a creative, is that what you really want? How do you want to see yourself? But those are questions, it's like you have to ask yourself that and be able to gauge what it is that you want from your own work, then feel that you have to produce work for the sake of a certain, person or social media or whatever else. Given that, okay, commercial side, yes, you're tapping in and that has to happen a certain way. That's fine. But it's very different when you're producing art, because you're doing what you feel in your soul, which is not exactly what a client asks for. You know what I mean? So a client will ask for a certain set of things and you'll know how to fulfill it because you have the skill. which is very technical. But when you look at what comes from the soul, it has nothing to do with the technical aspect at all. Yes, you may have the skills, but then what you express is what you express.
True. Wow.
Yes.
I just had this question. We generally don't ask this to our guests, but I really want to know what's your educational background? I mean, how did you from being a curious kid to being a full-time artist? What was the journey?
Yeah. So so I can start with my high school, because that actually formulated a lot of what I felt about art. So I did a very different system. I did the international baccalaureate, which was IB. So as a system itself, it's very different as compared to your CBSE, IGCSE, all of them put together. It's more critical in the sense that you can learn only so much by heart, but the question would be such that you would have to know the theory behind it. You would have to be able to justify your questions, so your answers itself. So even then, when I was doing my IB art at the time, I was able to kind of tap into a more creative side of myself, where I was not just justifying it, but I was also creating while I was justifying. So that automatically changed how I was looking at art. And this was in Kodaikanal International. From there, after I graduated, I went to Pratt Institute, which was located in New York, in Brooklyn. Given that it was one of the most difficult things, most difficult 4 years of my life, it was also one of those periods where you discover the most about yourself and your skills. And I did, everything from woodworking to silk screening to jewelry to welding to graphic design. I kind of really opened up my skill set, because I said there's no other point in time when I'm going to come back here to New York, especially for education, because it was so expensive despite all of the help that I got. So, it's like though, and of course the base is of course my parents' support, because they supported all of my dreams. So for me to gain that support and be able to move from there and then go to New York, that itself is a huge deal, because not a lot of kids get to do that. Their own creative spirit is broken very early on. For me, of course, I was a bit of a stubborn kid. So even if teachers used to throw my, not my high school teachers, but when I was much, much younger, your middle school teachers would sometimes tear my drawings and throw it away. And I'd be like, I'm going to just make another one. That's it. Like, it was like that. It's not heat. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what I feel, and that all comes from the fact that my parents support. They said, like, who cares, yeah? That was just one drawing. You're going to do millions of them in this lifetime, and you need to just have the bigger picture in life. So after I finished Pratt, I realized that my bigger picture had become quite small, because I had already specified my focus, because I had gone into painting. But that meant that, okay, what could I do with this that would help me also be able to not always be dependent on my own parents. So when I went into MSU, it was 2 years later. And this is an advice that I would give to everybody. Please don't do your master's without knowing what you really want. Please don't do it, because it means a lot when you go into the course and you figure out what you really want, and it makes the world of difference. Because it certainly took me 2 years, which is not traditional at all, because people finish bachelor's and go straight into masters, or say they'll take 1 year max. But this basically I did because I realized that I needed the experience. I needed to know exactly what I wanted to do. So I did residencies, I worked jobs, I did internships, and then I said masters in art history, because this is my forte. I know how to write well, and I will do art also well. So why not writing in art? So that's how it worked. And that's a solid educational background that I got, because a lot of people understand and know that New York is a great place for art. And secondly, a lot of people recognize MSU Baroda as a great institute for art. So automatically it put me at a bit of an advantage. So yeah, that's how I started, thinking about it on a very, I guess, practical basis.
Wow, interesting. So we have a lot to absorb from this episode.
Yeah, it like
We talked a lot.
No, thank you so much for giving me the space to, express it, because I find it so difficult even as an artist that, we can't always have these conversations, because it's always with other fellow creatives, so fellow people who also create content, that somehow, we connect and understand, and, we're able to do it together. Otherwise, it's very difficult to find that space. And, hopefully my archive will eventually formulate into that space where, people are able to just freely express and understand their own processes.
Will definitely be. I would want to be part of that archive, and hopefully we can work together in this in that. So well, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to talk about various things. Yeah, Harshvardhan.
It was a true pleasure to have the invite.
yes, it
Honestly,
was. I mean,
because it's
I
good.
honestly, yeah, I honestly had like very, very, very less knowledge about NFT. And to be very honest, I heard the term NFT like a couple of months ago. I was just scrolling through Instagram and it came up. And then Jainish came up to me and said, "Oh, we are doing this podcast on NFT." And he gave me the task. So what usually happens is the harder part, he does it. He does the research. He approaches the guests and everything. So this time he gave me the task of doing the due research and then coming up with questions. But yes, all the questions that you were asked were finalized by Jainish, though. Like I don't know, brought up some shit once, but then,
That's fine. That's all right.
So,
That's okay. I can understand. It's
so
always the team
I got
effort.
to know a lot. Yes. So being like considering myself that I did not know anything, and then I got to know a lot. So obviously our viewers, they'll be they'll get more advantage out of it. And so yes, Amoxy Tales is Moksha's Instagram page. Do follow her and then see if there's something for you. And also please don't forget to subscribe to RiffScript as well, because
These guys
Janice
are
does. Yeah,
amazing.
thank you. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it as well,
I
just as
definitely
we
did.
did.
Definitely did. Thank you so much. I really am so grateful for having this space, to be honest. And it was great talking to the both of you. And
Thank you very much.
I really wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Same. Same to you. Bye.
Yeah, to all the viewers and listeners, goodbye, good morning, good afternoon, whenever you are watching or listening to this. Like, share, and subscribe to our episode.
This is my copy. This is my copyright whenever.
Okay.
All right. See you guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye.